They say love can be a dangerous game, but for one man named Glen Edwards, it became a deadly obsession. In this chilling video, we take a deep look at the twisted mind of a serial killer who lured women with his charm, only to brutally snuff out their lives. In the dark underbelly of criminal history, one name stands out: Glen Rogers, known as the cross-country killer. Born and raised in Hamilton, Ohio, Glen Edwards Rogers was a charming, handsome, yet volatile individual who was on a nationwide killing spree that left at least 4 women dead in 4 separate states. Let's delve into the chilling tale of this infamous murderer. Glen Edward Rogers was born on July 15, 1962, also known as the cross-country killer or the Casanova killer. Glen had a terrible birth and suffered from sleeping difficulties, ADHD, and frequent head bashing after his parents raised his 6 brothers and sisters. He was impulsive and seemed to be always in motion. But more importantly, he had a terrible time processing stress, and he reacted in anger to his family's incessant abuse, neglect, and deprivation, largely at the hands of his parents. He began abusing substances at an early age, using both alcohol and drugs. Glen's signature move was to pick up blonde and red-headed women in bars, enticing them to give him a ride home. Once he had them under a spell, he would attempt to spend the night with them. However, the women who fell for his redneck good looks would tragically find themselves lying in the morgue. Glen's killings were impulsive acts of rage, distinguished from the cooling-off periods typical of serial killers. Interestingly, Glen Rogers is considered a possible alternative suspect in the 1994 murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. However, as of 2022, none of these allegations have resulted in formal charges. The notoriety of Glen's crimes led to his inclusion in the FBI's 10 Most Wanted Fugitives list, following a crime spree that began on September 28, 1995, with his first confirmed murder. His first murder was that of his roommate. His next known kill was a woman he met at a bar in Van Nuys, California. In September 1995, she was found raped and strangled inside her burning pickup truck. The third victim, another barfly, was found stabbed to death in her bathtub in Jackson, Mississippi on November 3rd. Yet another woman's body was found in a bathtub in Tampa, Florida on November 5th. His last victim was found stabbed to death in her bedroom on November 11 in Bossier City, Louisiana. Authorities suspected Glen of being involved in multiple killings, including the stabbing or strangling of an elderly man from Ohio in 1993, as well as the murders of 4 women in California, Mississippi, Florida, and Louisiana. Although Glen initially claimed to have committed closer to 70 murders, he later recanted, stating that he was joking and had not taken any lives. Glen Edward Rogers began his murder spree with the suspected killing of Mark Peters, a former housemate who tragically met his demise. In January 1993, Peters' lifeless body was discovered under a pile of furniture in an abandoned house belonging to the Rogers family. Mark Peters was from Hamilton, Ohio. Peters, a retired electrician and veteran, allowed Glen to live in his home until October 1993, when he was reported missing, along with his car and several of his valuable personal items, including antiques, guns, and a collection of coins. On January 10, 1994, the police made a bone-chilling discovery in a cabin owned by Glen Rogers' family in Beattyville, Kentucky. It was here that they uncovered the remains of the 71-year-old roommate, Mark Peters. Peters had willingly taken Rogers into his home, offering him shelter and friendship. However, by October 1993, both Peters and Rogers had vanished, raising suspicions and concerns among their acquaintances. It wasn't until police searched the family cabin in Beattyville, Kentucky, that they discovered Peters' skeleton, bound to a chair and concealed beneath the furniture. The murder of Mark Peters would serve as a haunting introduction to Glen Edwards Rogers' reign of terror. As the investigation deepened, law enforcement would uncover an even more sinister path strewn with the bodies of his victims. This frightening discovery predicted Glen's dark journey. In September 1995, his path crossed with that of Sandra Gallagher, a 33-year-old mother of 3, at McGredd's Bar in Van Nuys, California. Little did Sandra know that these chance encounters would seal her tragic fate. The following day, her lifeless body was discovered in her car, a horrifying sight of strangulation and severe burns. The proximity of the crime scene to Rogers' Van Nuys apartment raised suspicions, pointing authorities in his direction. Authorities believe that after ruthlessly murdering Sandra Gallagher, Rogers embarked on a chilling spree, leaving a trail of death across multiple states. On June 22, 1999, justice finally caught up with Glen Edward Rogers. He was convicted of the murder of Sandra Gallagher, a crime that had sent shockwaves through the community. The state of California, recognizing the magnitude of his atrocities, sentenced him to death on July 16, 1999. His next victim was Linda Price, who fell into his love trap of Glen very quickly. A month earlier, before Linda's murder, on October 3rd, Linda had met Rogers at the Mississippi State Fair, where he had been working. He was charming, and Linda fell for him right away. They soon rented an apartment and moved in together. Linda, captivated by Rogers' charm, quickly fell under his spell. Linda soon got attached to Glen, sharing an apartment in Jackson, Mississippi. But as time passed, Glen was becoming more rude and aggressive with Linda. Worried about her daughter's well-being, Linda's mother expressed concerns about Rogers' volatile nature. Linda had confided in her mother, revealing that Rogers had a temper and unpredictable mood swings. As time went on, Linda's happiness gave way to uncertainty. Linda's mother's worst fears were realized when Linda suddenly ceased all communication and failed to answer the door of her apartment. Rogers had vanished, adding to the growing suspicion that he may have harmed Linda. Detectives in Jackson believed that Rogers had fled the area, leaving behind a web of unanswered questions. Tragically, Linda Price's life was cut short, just like the other victims who had encountered Glen Rogers. She too met her untimely demise in a horrifying manner. Linda's lifeless body was discovered in a bathtub, a chilling scene reminiscent of the other killings. As with the other women, Linda was in her 30s. She had vibrant red hair and had fallen into Rogers' deadly trap during an evening of drinks like other victims. After the murder of Linda Price, Glen fled to Tampa, Florida, and met Tina Marie Cribbs on November 5, 1995. Tina Marie Cribbs was seen leaving the Showtown bar in Gibsonton, Florida, in the company of Glen Rogers. Witnesses recall that Rogers had been buying drinks for Cribbs and her friends before requesting a ride from her. Little did she know that this would be her last night alive. A bartender at the bar provided crucial information to the police. They confirmed that Rogers had indeed purchased drinks for Cribbs and her companions, creating a sense of familiarity. The night took a sinister turn when Rogers asked Cribbs for a ride, a seemingly innocuous request that would lead to an unspeakable tragedy. A bartender at the bar provided crucial information to the police. They confirmed that Rogers had indeed purchased drinks for Cribbs and her companions, creating a sense of familiarity. The night took a sinister turn when Rogers asked Cribbs for a ride, a seemingly innocuous request that would lead to an unspeakable tragedy. 2 days later, a member of the cleaning staff at the Tampa 8 Inn stumbled upon a horrifying scene. Tina Marie Cribbs' lifeless body was found in a bathtub, mirroring the murder of Linda Price in Mississippi. Cribbs had suffered multiple stab wounds to her chest and buttocks, a stark reminder of the brutality inflicted upon her. The chilling evidence continued to mount. The next day, Cribbs' wallet was discovered at a rest area in North Florida. The fingerprints lifted from her wallet and the motel room were a perfect match for Rogers. The undeniable connection further solidified the case against him. On November 13, 1995, Glen Edward Rogers was apprehended in Kentucky, driving Tina Marie Cribbs' car. Shockingly, he claimed that the vehicle had been lent to him and that Cribbs was alive when he last saw her. However, the overwhelming evidence and the disturbing nature of his crimes painted a much darker picture. Justice prevailed when, on July 11, 1997, Glen Edward Rogers was convicted and sentenced to death for the brutal murder of Tina Marie Cribbs. Her life was cut short in a senseless act of violence, and Cribbs became one of the tragic victims in Rogers' disturbing killing spree. While Glen was suspected of many other murders and crimes, there is insufficient evidence to support this. Just 4 incidents were confirmed by the police. Rogers was scheduled to be executed on Valentine's Day 1999 in Florida. Still, he immediately appealed to the Florida Supreme Court, claiming that the state had not presented enough evidence to support the charges. Rogers also argued that the trial court should have granted the defense's motions for a mistrial because a witness was allowed to testify about a misdemeanor for which Rogers was convicted in California. He also claimed the prosecution was allowed to present an improper argument during closing arguments. Well, that's it for today's video. Thank you for joining us on this disturbing journey into the life and crimes of Glen Rogers, the cross-country killer. Stay tuned for more gripping stories of true crime on our channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for future updates. Until then, stay safe.